as an opener or a supporting act, even recently in my career, where I took a L financially, but I know that this headliner that I'm going in front of is exposing me to all these people, and that's just as, if not more valuable
Yeah.
than this money I'll lose this time, because I may leave here with thousands of new fans that are then along with me for the rest of the journey.
Welcome to a very special episode of the Quartertones podcast. My name is Mike Imhenna. We're recording live at XP Air in Riyadh. I have with me Bas, who is a icon here in Riyadh. Welcome, man.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
So I don't want to repeat the journey that you talked about earlier today, but maybe let's just give a little bit of a setting the scene of how does it feel to actually be in Riyadh. You grew up in and out of the Arab world. You grew up all over the world. How does it feel to be here?
Man, it's eye opening, honestly. Like you were alluding to, my family's from Sudan, so I'm no stranger to the region, but this is my first time in Saudi, and even more impressive is just the amount of culture and like artistry and music that's being born and bred out here right now. I'm being exposed to so many cool acts from the whole region, so it's just been a pleasure and it's been inspiring.
Yeah. The set that you did yesterday, what's a little different about how you approach putting that set together when you're kind of coming in cold to a festival like this? You're like, I don't know who's going to show up. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
control everything.
that's a great question. I think I've played enough festivals to know that, um, you can't have an ego about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't know what the crowd is gonna look like, and there's a million acts that you don't know who they're here to see. So I just try to stick with some high energy. Have a good time. I think that's most important. When you're having a good time on stage, I've noticed people are gonna respond to that. They're gonna react to that. They're gonna want to give you their energy. And then I was also fairly surprised by just how many people were familiar and were going word for word with me. So it felt like a great mix of just like fans of mine and then some music discovery.
Yeah. I kind of want to go back to this idea of dreams, right? You're on Dreamville, J. Cole's label. It's very much a family affair for you. Like your brother's there, your childhood friends. Like this is this is your closest knit group. I want to talk a little bit about what it actually felt like 10, 15 years ago to have those dreams. Was there one guy in the room that was like, come on, guys, this is ridiculous? Or were you all sort of fully bought into this idea?
No, I think we were fully galvanized by Cole. I don't know many people. I mean, Cole was playing pro basketball in Africa just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know many people that have his desire and his level of self belief. I think it infected all of us. I think Dreamville is a very appropriately titled thing. I grew up in New York with a million rappers on each corner, so I may have been jaded, but one thing we all shared was a belief in his talent, and I think that kind of helped all of us find our way within it. And then once you see it, obviously everything changes. All of those jaded thoughts change, and I credit Cole with that. He kind of instilled that belief in all of us.
Yeah. What in your case, if you go back to 2010, right, which wasn't the very beginning, but maybe the beginning of this sort of part of your career, could you then articulate what that dream was musically, professionally? Could you be like, all right, were there metrics? How did you even think about it?
No, at that point, I was just trying to get better as an artist.
Yeah.
I was just trying to learn the songwrite better. I was trying to meet more producers. I was trying to expand my sound. I was just trying to work on my craft. And I didn't even send Cole my music. He heard it through my brother, Ebe, obviously,
Yeah.
and he called me out the blue one day, and he's like, "Yo, this is you?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was kind of messing around and stuff. He's like, "Nah, bro, I can't wait to see where you're gonna be in 2 to 3 years. Keep developing your craft." He's like, "I know you personally, and when I listen to this, I hear you authentically." That was one of the things he told me that kind of stuck with me. He's like, "You're not trying to be something you're not." And he's like, that's one of the hardest things as a writer is to like be able to authentically express yourself. And then after that, he would, hit me up like, yo, I'm going to tour in Europe. If you want to come hang out, like I wasn't performing or nothing, but if you want to come, come be around it. And I'd be like, yeah, of course. And
Yeah.
and then I got to meet more producers and live musicians, and got to watch him every night, and see how his songwriting infects the crowd, and how his post production, and even just rehearsals for his live shows. So it was truly like a mentorship kind of program where and that's something I think is missing now, just artist development. I think we're in a day and age where a label is happy enough to snatch up an artist with one hot song and collect all the royalties on that and then discard of you.
Yeah.
Whereas in the music industry used to be, you go back to Motown, they're putting you in dance class, they're putting you with the stylist, they're putting you with vocal lessons and all these things because they want to build a star for 15, 20, 30 years. I think everything shifted with the level of consumption now, where labels are most so like, all right, if I own a master on something that's streaming, do I really need to invest tour support? Sending, them first
Yeah.
tours you do are a loss financially. They're a complete loss. Someone has to support that. Do I want to put in all this money into videos to make you look like a star? Do I want to do all of this? And more we're seeing the industry shy away from that.
That's
And
interesting.
yeah.
I don't think I ever knew that. Just to cut you off, like I don't think I ever knew that the first couple of tours are a loss. Did you know that going into it?
No, you think everyone that's touring is just rolling in money?
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, no. And then that's one of the other issues when you start is everyone around you thinks that as well. you know?
Yeah.
But that's not at all the case. No, you have to invest in yourself. And that's another thing. Like I'm telling you, this is one of the ways I learned a lot. Being around Cole, I remember one of his early tours. He went out with Rihanna, and they played arenas,
Yeah.
mind you, arenas all over the states.
Don't tell me they lost money on that.
He lost money on that.
You're kidding me.
Because if you're opening for Rihanna, you want to put together a good show. So you got the whole band out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's tour buses, hotels, salaries, per diem every night. And, he took an L. And I remember that vividly stuck with me because it's like any business. You have to invest in yourself. You know what I mean? You have to invest in yourself. I've done tours as an opener or a supporting act, even recently in my career, where I took a L financially, but I know that this headliner that I'm going in front of is exposing me to all these people, and that's just as, if not more valuable than this money I'll lose this time, because I may leave here with thousands of new fans that are then along with me for the rest of the journey. I think a lot of people don't understand that when you get into this game, you have to invest in yourself. You got to take that money and invest in your merchandising, invest in your live show, visuals, lighting, invest in your video content team. Like everything is, every artist is a business in itself. So, and every business doesn't survive unless you invest in it.
You said something really interesting. Maybe it was just like a mistake of a turn of phrase. You said, it exposes me to different audiences. You didn't say different audiences are exposed to me, right? And the interesting thing is, you have all these global sounds in your, every interview I've heard you you've talked about UK Garage, and you've talked about Daft Punk, and you've talked about all these different sounds that you can hear sort of the residuals of them now. So I'm curious, like when you go on tour now, what is that exposure doing to you right now? Like, what does it look like when you hit Milwaukee? What does it look like when you go to South Africa? What does it look like when you're in Riyadh?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because you're right about, I did make a mistake on that turn of phrase, but it actually is that way because I'll always watch the headliners when I'm supporting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a mistake. I think it's actually real.
Yeah. I always watch the headliners. I watch their crowd. I just went out with Jungle, which is completely different.
Totally different.
Completely different than what I do. And I'm blessed enough to have a couple songs with them and to have worked with them. And they've impacted how I make music as well. But seeing it live was different, seeing how it resonates with these huge crowds. And then you start to think like, man, like, okay, I can put something like that in my song. You know what I mean? I can have some of these sonics, I can have some of this, frankly, like crossover appeal that they have. You know what I mean? And I've even mentioned that to them. Um, but yeah, I think it's just like it's a constant. It never ends. It's a constant thing. Like even like you were mentioning South Africa. I went out there, met a bunch of producers. I went to South Africa in 2018 in December, and I heard of my piano like in its infancy,
Yeah.
and I was going to clubs every night, and I'm hearing house, like South African house and piano, and even the South African rap, and I built a great network there over the years, and that stuff has made its way into my music. Me and Cole, the lead single off my last album was Passport Bros, and there's log drums all through that record, and like where did we get the log drums from? On my piano,
Yeah, yeah.
So
Like asking the Uber driver, what do you listen to?
yeah, yeah.
Basically, everywhere I travel, it's like, what do you listen to?
Right.
Like, and it's like
Right.
different than what I listen to. But
And that's important.
Yeah.
You have to kind of keep reinventing yourself, and in order to do so, you have to find the things that inspire you.
Yeah. I want to talk about proximity, right? And this idea of like being in the room, going on tour, you're not playing, you might not have like an official job, but something about that proximity like seeps into your psyche, seeps into the way you approach your professionalism. What are some of the like lessons that you remember learning during those days where you were just on tour, you were just like in the room, so to speak?
Yeah. First off was just seeing how intense and important like just rehearsals are, especially with a band. If you're up there with a DJ, it's a little different.
Yeah.
It's pretty much just you two that have to be on the same page. But when you're up there with a drummer, guitar, bass, all these like moving parts, and then the lighting and the front of house engineer, and everybody has to be on point for the show to be tight. And I've spent countless hours at rehearsals that weren't even mine.
Yeah.
Just watching other people rehearse. I just watched Jungle rehearse on this last tour. I watched Cole and his people rehearse. We did early on in Cole's career. We did oh yeah, on this last tour with him and Drake actually. Even talking about because we did a tour with Drake early in Cole's career,
Yeah.
but very recently last year they did a tour in the States, and I was watching before the first show in Tampa. I was watching Drake do like his like run through of his set, and like just watching how meticulous he was with it. And I'm like, man, this dude is 15 years in of being at the top, and we're like in Tampa, Florida. No disrespect to Tampa, it's not like it's not like you're at like Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, it's not like the most important show on the
Yeah,
tour.
yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And this dude is still there, bro. We must have been in that arena for like 12 hours, and I'm just sitting there like amazed and inspired, and it's like that's why, guys like Drake and Cole are at the top because they put so much, just meticulous thought and energy and really pour themselves into work.
Yeah. I want to talk about Sudan. So, I've been watching you over the last 2 days, and it's amazing the amount of like Sudanese pride, and it's not only you, right? Like literally, if I'm ever in the room with a Sudanese artist, a Sudanese filmmaker, a Sudanese writer, a Sudanese like lawyer, architect, doesn't matter. When they are there to give a talk, when they are there to do anything, there's like a queue. There is a straight up queue of people who are coming through to support, to meet them, to take their picture, to tell them how proud they are, how inspired they are, like all this stuff. And like that doesn't happen. I'm Lebanese. That does not happen. Like if I go give a talk somewhere, right? And this is like a very Sudanese thing. Did you know that was going to happen? Like, did you know that
what?
like no matter where you go, you're
I'm
gonna
not
have
at all
this?
surprised because my whole life, like my family, like we said, was traveling all over the place. We
Yeah.
spent years in France and Qatar, and eventually made our way to America. And then we traveled a lot. Even when we were in the States, we would go home like every other year to Sudan, and that would include usually a transit to visit like some auntie in the UK or an auntie in the Netherlands, whatever the case may be. And uh, wherever we went, the whole community would rally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if I was traveling on my own, and this is when I'm already an established artist. My mom will call me like, "Oh, I heard you're in so and so. Make sure you go visit this family. Make sure you go visit." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ma, I got a show, I got an after party, and I got
Oh,
a
you're too
flight."
good. You're good. You're too good for auntie.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
She
like, you
wiped
better,
your butt.
yeah. You better go and make sure you check in. So I think um that's very much just a part of the culture.
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised that it translated into, because it's even now guys will be like, "Yo, I met this guy. I met your cousin, so and so, so and so," and it's like, "Oh, like I know that's not my blood cousin, but we all refer to each other as
Yeah,
such."
for
You know
sure.
what I mean? It's like it's just part of the culture. It's ingrained in us. It's like instinctual. So when I see it now, it's beautiful, man. When I tour, they'll come out with the flags. Uh, you know what I mean? They'll just come out and represent for us. Is humbling, and it's like, we all take pride in it, and especially because um there's like, it's a new generation of Sudanese youth. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I'm pretty much an OG now, but it's like it wasn't always this easy to get into, to really express ourselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not like Sudan as a country, even though it's very musical. It was kind of oppressive against that, and
Yeah.
all that was repressed. The arts, that was part of the revolution that happened. It's like, yo, where we've always been a musical people. But now it's like, and then obviously there was a generation before us. They were really trying to get out and find the opportunities to
Yeah.
set us up in a life where okay, like being creative wasn't a thought for them. It was about survival. It's about the upward mobility, financially, some security, and then getting their offspring into countries where there were more, opportunities available to us. And in that, I guess, comfort, we were able to find our creativity, because we grew up under much less dire circumstances.
Yeah.
Um, so to see it now, to see even the younger kids coming up and how fearless and how creative they are, it's like, man, it's so inspiring, and I take a lot of pride in it. And when they mention me as inspiration or someone they look to early on, to be like, yo, there's one of us doing it in America with, a very prominent crew. You know what I mean? I take a lot of pride in that.
Especially for like those of us who are third culture kids who, grew up in a couple different places, have a deep emotional connection and biographical connection to where we call home, but maybe the linguistics aren't fully on point. Maybe we don't see our family that much. Those moments, that's also like a subgenre of people that you represent.
Yeah.
Do you feel that representation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny because through that we changed how our parents look at everything.
Yeah.
I remember the first show we played where Cole sold out Madison Square Garden, and I was opening up that show. And till this day, that's the only concert my dad's attended. He's a jazz guy. He don't want to go to a hip hop concert and hear a bunch of 808s booming. But I remember after the show, he came up to my manager Derek, and obviously when I dropped out of college to do school, that's not something we do
Yeah,
where
that's
we're
not something I
from.
do.
Yeah,
No.
you don't drop out of college. You know what I mean? And
I gave you a brain. I
yeah,
put you through
yeah,
school.
yeah. You better, engineer, lawyer, pharmacist, doctor. You figure it out, but you're
Yeah.
not dropping out. And I dropped out to do music, and obviously, rightfully so. It worried my parents
Yeah.
tremendously. But once they saw that, oh, this was feasible, and not only was it feasible, it allowed us to do really well, and support them and support our extended family. Um, then it was like, wait, their whole mind frame changed completely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like it's an honor to be able to do that. Like, yo, you had to live a tougher and way rougher life than I did, and it hardened you in certain ways, and then to see them, like soften up to it and start to enjoy, like, these luxuries we can provide. There's no greater honor than being able to do those things for your loved ones.
Yeah. I want to talk about snakes in the grass, right? Like usually when people see episodes like this, they're like, "Oh, this is a very successful person this person is bathing in success. They must feel great about their career constantly. Everything is perfect. Nothing to worry about. They made it.
False.
False. Yeah. So what are the snakes in the grass that you and your very, very smart team worry about? Because every patch of grass has lots of potholes and snakes and stuff like that. What do you guys think about? You're like, all right, we're not falling for that. We got to be careful of that. That's a possible trap that we have to avoid. What are the main things?
It's the game is constantly changing. The industry is constantly changing. I remember when I signed my record deal in 2014, it was like just the very beginning of streaming really taking off.
Mm.
So even my first deal is almost based more on like when artists were still selling albums in iTunes. People were paying $10, $12 for your album, $1.29 for your single, and then it changed to streaming, and the whole revenue structure got just pulled from under our feet.
Yeah.
Now it's like you better be doing shows because to keep it a buck, streaming is not really.
Not gonna pay you anything.
No, it's
Yeah.
not. And if and the label is gonna grab all that anyway, and
Yeah.
and you'll never even really. It's so hard to even get a clear gauge.
Yeah. You went from a recording artist to a performing artist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now the game is changing again. We're seeing labels kind of move into a more distro thing where
Yeah.
it's like, all right, we don't even the major labels are kind of operating like distros now, where it's like, all right, well, we'll do this split with you, but we're not really going to invest any real money into it.
Yeah.
And then we're seeing AI. We're seeing like the proliferation of AI, and now it's like,
It's scary.
bro, yeah, exactly. It's like it's scary, but it's also I was in the studio messing around with AI like last week, and I'm like, man, it's incredible what you could do.
Yeah, but
You
that's
know?
the source of the scariness.
Yeah, exactly,
I'm
exactly.
like,
It's
damn,
like
that sounds
power.
good.
Yeah. You might not need me in a second, buddy. But again, it's like you have to try to, especially with technology. There's no fighting it. You have to stay on the cutting edge,
Yeah.
or you're gonna get left behind. So I think that's kind of always what keeps me up a bit. Is like how are things changing, and how can you be ahead of it as opposed to trying to keep up with the changes, or like try to follow them when maybe it's like already past you.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I think that's mainly the point is like the industry is changing so fast at all times, and you just have to keep in touch with that while trying to be a creative. You have to kind of wear your marketing hat. All right, the man, like TikTok wasn't a thing when I.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People went. You dropped a video, they go watch it on YouTube,
Yeah.
and that was a lot of attraction. Now it's like you drop a video, you better have 30 pieces of short form content.
All vertical.
Yeah, because more people are gonna see that than are gonna go on YouTube and watch the video. So it's just trying to keep up with everything. The way tech changes our industry, I would say, is the biggest thing.
Do you guys think about the sort of narrative arc? Like Cole is like the prime example of somebody who's like, all right, I'm going to tell a story over half a decade or a decade, and this is going to be my theme, this basketball theme, and we're going to go from this to this to this. I'm going to basically be a comic book character, and I'm going to build an audience, and they're going to be watching and reading along this comic book hero's journey, right? Basically. Do you guys as a team, you and Derek, or you and the rest of the team think, all right, what's my narrative? What's this narrative arc? What is like my origin story? How do I think through this stuff? Do you have to do that? And can you do that and be authentic at the same time?
Yeah, I think Cole's a master storyteller.
Yeah.
And he's like woven that very effectively into his marketing.
Yeah.
I think for me, what I probably struggle with more is my story is less straightforward. Like you said, like we're third culture kids. So, Cole can speak to, yo, I'm a kid from the South that moved up to the big city, and I want to be a star. They had me on the sidelines. I'm coming up. I'm blowing up.
Yeah.
All these things. I'm from Fayetteville. I got a dollar in a dream. All those taglines and all those things became events, and they became albums, and they became mixtape titles. It was, it was really well pulled off. I think for me, it's more so like okay, I'm making this album Milky Way, and my album cover is me at the pyramids in Meadowy in Sudan.
Yeah.
And then sonically on that album, I'm gonna take you to Africa. I'm gonna take you to New York. I'm gonna take you to Brazil. I did a record with Sango that's very like Brazil ballet funk inspired. You know, I'm gonna do records with FKJ.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to sonically give you my world view, my upbringing, my story that way. Because I always find it's a little difficult for me being, Sudanese American, New Yorker,
Yeah. Like
Dreamville.
New
There's
York is not excited about Artful Dodger.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's like it's not I would say like as straightforward as like a Cole can tell it, because there's just so many places that I relate to and
Yeah.
that are part of me and that I consider home, that I found it more effective for me to try to tell my story sonically and through the media that I put out than really having like a story arc.
How do you balance that, like just artistically and emotionally? Because this idea, the like commercial grind of, or I should say, the grind of the commerce side that sort of like crunches you, right? I feel like it can kind of squeeze out the emotional authenticity side, the creative side. We're like, all right, this is how I'm feeling, but it's not part of that arc. It's not part of that. It's not convenient. Like,
Right.
how do you manage that emotionally? I'm very much asking for a friend.
Yeah, I think for me, because so much of my early career started on the road, which is
Yeah,
probably the opposite of now, where your career probably starts virally. I started out touring, so
yeah,
I
that's
was
interesting.
opening up for Cole. Then I went out, I opened up for Ab Soul. Shout out my boy Soul. He was like the first person outside of Cole to take me on tour, and we did 52 shows in 55 nights. It was the
What?
most grueling tour I've
Jeez,
ever been a part of. Um,
you took an L on that too?
yeah, for
That
sure.
sounds intense.
For sure, but I had tour support.
Okay,
I had tour support because at that point I was signed.
okay,
But that's what I mean. The label had to invest that
yeah,
money, which is one of those things I was referring to that's happening less and less now. But guess what? I went on that tour in 52 cities. I got in front of, Absol's fans, and made a lot of fans on that tour. Built a great relationship um, with Soul. So I think if I was coming up now, I would struggle with that a lot more. But I had such an organic kind of campaign going. You're almost like a politician going to every city and campaigning for the people at that point.
yeah,
And even when I was touring with Cole, even I'm the opener, and after every show, I'm at the merch stand, and I'm taking pictures with everybody. I'm meeting people, and those moments stay with them. And then when they leave, they tap in with you. They start following you and things of that nature. So if I didn't have that, which is increasingly rare nowadays, because like we said, most people's careers start with virality. It's not like the old days where you had to go get it out the mud and
yeah,
really go out there. Then I would struggle with that more. But I've always had a sense of security in my base, and we talk about that a lot. Is like feed your base, like drown out everything else. Because obviously, yeah, I want a number one hit. Who doesn't want a number one hit, right?
yeah,
Who doesn't want all the accolades? Who doesn't want to play bigger venues? Who doesn't want all those things? But your base will be the first to know when you've like deviated into something that isn't you. Most likely they'll call you out on it, and if they won't, then at least they won't support it. You
yeah,
know what I mean? But if you feed your base what they want and consistently do that, they'll generate the noise that draws in everyone else, because everyone else will start to feel like, damn, what's this that I'm not up on? Who is
yeah.
this guy? Why are all these people championing this dude? So I've always believed in that, and like I said again, being a fly on the wall, like I saw that with Cole. You know what I mean? I remember the internet jokes like, "Oh, Cole ain't dropped his album yet. He's gonna flop. He's on a, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Hove got him on the shelf." Like I remember all those things that people were saying, and then I remember the album coming out and going number one, doing 200 some thousand copies first week, and we weren't surprised internally because we had spent all them years on the road, and
Yeah.
like, nah, we've met the fans, we've seen the fans, we've shook their hands, we took the pictures, we know they exist. I think nowadays you can get lost in the narrative online, and then that can lead you astray.
Do you what is your relationship with online in general? Like, how do you have like a tense relationship with your sort of online alter ego and sort of the comment section in general?
No, I mean, I'm a millennial, so we got to kind of like I formed all my social norms at the park
Yeah.
in New York, or in the streets running
Yeah.
around. Like I remember when we didn't have cell phones and I had to call you, be like, "Yo, I'm about to jump on the subway. I'll meet you at so and so in 45 minutes," and then you get off the subway, and you better hope they're there.
You better hope you know how to get there
Yeah,
because there's
yeah,
no maps.
yeah. Don't get lost. There's no maps, and then you drop another coin in the payphone, and you call, and his mom is like, "Oh no, he left like 30 minutes ago," and you're like,
Yeah.
"All right, he'll be here sooner or later, right?" So by the time the internet came along, you know, I didn't take it that seriously. Like all my interactions, even now online, like people say hateful things all the time. Like
Yeah.
I laugh damn near. Like if you diss me well enough, I'm gonna join in on the laughter. Like that's how
Yeah.
I treat the
You're like,
internet.
that's a bar.
Yeah, yeah. Like that's good. You know what I mean? It's like how me and my homies would banter.
Yeah.
So that's how I interpret it. I started noticing, obviously, with the younger generation that came up with it, with the internet as like an integral part of their like socialization.
Yeah.
That is like much more like deeper consequences. Like I could never imagine being cyberbullied. That's not even a. You know what I mean? Like I grew up in the streets. Like it's different. But so even now it's like it's whatever. Like I'll put it down. I won't think about it.
Yeah.
I'll read something. I won't think about it. It won't affect my day. Like not in the least bit. It could be the most negative thing you got to say about me. But I'm just like, what is this? It's 150 characters in a tweet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm cool. I have a great relationship with online because I just don't care enough.
Okay. So the exact opposite is like family. Um, you often hear people say, don't work with family. You often hear people say, working with close friends can be tricky. How have you managed to do this? What are the pros, cons? Like, what is a superpower of that arrangement? What is something that's just like, oof, that's rough. You have to manage that.
Yeah, that's a great question because that arrangement, you know, goes astray often
Yeah.
and ruins relationships when it's not like you just fire family.
Yeah.
It's like at that point you're burning a whole relationship. I think for me, um, what was most important first of all is like you can't put you can't like expect too much out of people just because they're family or they're a friend. Like business is business. If me and you are homies, or like me and Eve, who's my blood brother, and I'm signed to his label, and if I do a business deal with you, I'm doing what's in the contract. I'm not expecting any more, and I'm gonna hold you accountable to
Correct.
your end. If this is the budget you gave me, I want every dollar in this budget. If I go over budget and I want to do something, and you tell me the budget's tapped, I'm not gonna say just because you're my brother.
Hook me up.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So I think in our team, we all had that understanding where it's like, yo, we're doing business. Obviously, we family, we boys, but we're gonna abide by the business.
Yeah.
And that's it's kept us going 15 years strong.
What's the superpower that comes from it though?
Um, oh, the superpower is easy, man. To me, it's about the people that work with you, man. They have to be passionate about what you do,
Yeah.
and they have to want to see you succeed. And who wants to see you succeed more than your friends and your family? I tell people that all the time because a lot of like up and coming artists will come up to me and be like, "You got any words of advice?" Or like, "Yo, I'm looking for like management." I'm like, "Yo, you can go to like the biggest management firm, and they're gonna take 20 to 30% of everything you do, and they're just gonna sit there and let you get hot, and then maybe they'll make a phone call for you here and there, or you find your friend around you who knows nothing about the music business, who's just incredibly passionate about you as a person and who believes in your art and your message and what you're trying to do, and you empower them. I can't tell you there's countless lessons I learned through our team. Like we've all cost each other a lot of money and made mistakes that have had repercussions, but we always learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
We never made those same mistakes again. And, you know, you have to afford people that. You have to empower the people around you. And, you know, my manager, Derek, who's running around here right now, we met, you know, playing football freshman year of high school.
Yeah.
That's over like 20 years ago now. And so he came in with me. I always knew him to be smart, bright. You know, he had the acumen to be a manager. He didn't know a thing about the music business. You know, he came around me and my brother Ebe. Same thing, fly on the wall. You meet people, you start to network. You know, we've made mistakes. You know, the first tours, logistically, everything's not tight. You know, you're gonna lose a bunch of money. You know, you don't ship the merch early enough. You don't. You don't. You know, you go to Europe, you ship your merch, it gets stuck at customs for a week.
Like, wait, taxes is
Yeah,
different in
yeah,
every place.
yeah, and then you're like, damn, man, I gotta pay for all this now, right?
Why can't I just fold the tote bag? It has to be a document.
So, you know, all those things we learn together, you know, but again, it's an investment in yourself, in your business, and the people around you.
Yeah. Okay, the last thing I want to ask you, I want to give recommendations. Let's say, imagine somebody comes up to you today, right? They're like, man, I love your music. I'm not really like well versed in this stuff, right? Like I'm a metalhead or something, whatever. I saw you perform. You're amazing. Can you indulge me and give me 5 albums I have to listen to that would help me appreciate your perspective?
Wow, 5 albums. I'm going with Get Rich or Die Trying, 50 Cent. I'm going with Daft Punk's Discovery. I'm going with Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt. Jamiroquai, Return of a Space Cowboy. And, ooh, dang, the last one, that's tough. Go ahead and go with Revenge of the Dreamers 3.
Nice.
We'll go with that one.
All right, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. What are you working on now? You're on tour. You're playing MSG in like a few
Yeah, I
days.
know. Cole is playing MSG.
Okay.
I'm going to support. 10-year anniversary of Forest Hills Drive. That was like that was the first tour, one of the first big tours that I toured with Cole and got to perform at. Very like life changing, I think, for all of us. So I just want to be there to relive the moment with the gang. But I've got a collab album coming out with this band, the Hics from London. They're like a R&B, electro soul, super incredibly talented duo. And we did a whole album together. I'm very excited to share it. Should be sometime early next year.
Amazing, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys.